Hey everybody, welcome to Pod Casty For Me, the podcast about film, culture, politics, and Clint Eastwood, where we watch every film directed by and or starring American filmmaker Clint Eastwood and explore how they speak to their moment. And this show is hosted by two one-tool players. I'm one of the one-tool players. My name is Jake Serwin.
My name is Ian Ryan. I'm one of the other ones. Mine, of course, is fielding. I'm a fielder.
I was, thinking of, putting on a Tool CD. I don't know. I've never listened to the band.
Okay, I thought you were maybe going nastier and talking about our tools, our one tools.
I've thought about that, but Maynard James Keenan. Is that right?
That's right, yep.
Okay, just checking. Cool. Glad to hear it. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Just gonna let our listeners know, coming in on a special mic that I bought just for this occasion, out of disrespect for today's film.
Yeah, this is distinctly one of the and/or starring episodes of the podcast, and it's exciting. We haven't had one of those in a long time.
It's true,
and may not again. Let's bring our guest in. Our guest today is a director, producer, head of production at Post Film, a Clint freak, and a returning guest. The prophecy is fulfilled. Chadd Harbold, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks, guys. Glad to be back talking about this piece of shit.
Oh, boy. There it is.
Dad, what do we owe you? Is it financial? Is it some type of blood debt? What would you say is fair for what we've done to you here?
No, I mean, honestly, it's still Clint, so it's still fairly watchable. But, it's a real kind of weak gust of wind of a movie.
Yeah.
That just kind of doesn't have anyone involved seeming to want it to exist.
Yeah, it's a real old man's fart of a film, and I'm thrilled to talk about it.
It's like the pee dripping out of his penis at the beginning of the movie.
Oh yeah, it's Jerry Stiller in Zoolander begging his bladder, his prostate to work. I'm trying to figure out what
Clint
was
Eastwood.
the name. Oh, thank you. I'm trying to figure out. So this is a film. It's called Trouble with the Curve. Have you ever heard of it?
Yep.
And this is a film that Clint Eastwood stars in, did not direct. Haven't had one of those since, I guess, Casper. Which, by the way, we recently found out. Chad, I wonder if you want to weigh in on this. So Spotify Wrapped also gives podcasters data on their own podcast. I assume they would do this also for the musicians that they are bleeding dry. But so on our Spotify Wrapped, apparently our most listened episode on Spotify, 160% of the average listening, Casper. Casper is our most listened episode.
So, of course, to whomever fell asleep with the Casper podcast on repeat, we salute you. Thank you so much.
Why do they have the repeat button on the podcast? They should. Who would want that?
You have to use your imagination and create within your mind palace a podcast with lots of interesting and funny stuff on it that you might want to listen to again.
I guess, because I always zone out during a radio lab, and then I have to go back and figure out, who are they talking to?
I'll double up on a blowback. Yeah, I think similarly.
Yeah, blowback as well. Anyway, before we get to all that, we got to do some of our bullshit. Well, of course, I'm talking about our signature segment, the 2 questions. Chad, were you able to come up with a question for us?
Yes, I wanted to do something that was tied to the movie in some way. So in the movie, Clint has his daughter, Amy Adams. She sort of became a lawyer to kind of please him and impress him. And that's what she kind of thought that he wanted her to be, when clearly her talent lies in scouting baseball players playing catch in the back of motels. Yeah. But so my question is, what did your dad want you to be?
It's getting a little dark in here. Ian, I'm going to ask you to go first.
Happy to. My father just found out about this podcast not too long ago.
Oh, yeah, we haven't really talked about that.
Don't expect him to be listening to this or any episode, but just in case, I think, fortunately, we had a real moment where...
Hi, Bill.
Yeah, hi, Bill. We had a conversation about what I thought he wanted me to be, and he was lovely in that conversation. I spent basically my entire childhood from about 6 to 18 believing I was going to be a doctor. I was in the little nerd. I was a medical explorer in high school, which is just for people who was like pre-med. Not only was I Medical Explorers, I was the president and vice president because you share the roles. You switch off.
Okay, so you're a consul.
That's right.
Of
exactly.
the Medical Explorers, yeah.
So every Monday, I went to the Palo Alto Medical Clinic. We heard talks from doctors. We would go tour in intensive care units and write like mini research proposals. And then I got to college and realized that to become a doctor, you either had to want it so badly or want it so badly for the wrong reasons, which seemed, I think, equally possible routes to becoming a doctor. And I said, there's lots of other things that I like. And I went on a little walk to tell my dad this because he is a physician also. So I think he was very excited to share this with the only one of his 6 sons to show any interest in his career.
He's a veterinary cosmetic surgeon.
That's right. Yeah, that's how Jake and I met.
Well, he decided 48 episodes in to start getting good at podcasting.
So we went on a walk, and my dad very helpfully, and I think he really only meant this in the nicest way possible to try to take some stress off of his son, who you could see was very worried to have this conversation. He was like, "You're gay. It's okay." And he was not saying it as a joke. He really just was trying to like alley-oop me to say.
Oh my God.
I think he meant it in the most loving way. Like, it's okay. We're going to be fine. I had to,
I've never heard the like, "Don't worry, son, we already knew" thing go wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was just like looking for anything that he might feel like it was in the right territory. Yeah. And, first semester of college feels like a classic time to... But we figured it out, and I still am very interested in medicine. We talk about it sometimes, but I'm happy to be what I am, a teacher / farmer / future failed podcaster. How about you, Jake?
That's beautiful. It's a little bit like a white magnesium flame that I can't quite look at when I try to imagine what my parents' hopes and dreams were for me. My parents are both lawyers, and so they forbade me from being a lawyer. So that kind of took that off of the table. I will say that recently I have fulfilled my father's sort of follow-up aspiration for me, which he had one. I think he just wanted me to do something worthy of what he sees as my potential or whatever. And then he sort of revised that goal so that I could meet it. And so now I am what he always wanted me to be, which is employed. And look,
great. Look at you now.
You can't say that for everybody. So
it's true. It's true.
And our relationship is the best father-son relationship anyone's ever had. There's no issues at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's all I'll be saying about that. What about you, Chadd?
Great. I'm glad I started us on a very comfortable
I love it. This is a great question.
It's
really great question.
This is right for the topic.
This is how you get to know each other as well. My dad is also a lawyer and also did not really want that for me because it's so full of stress and anxiety and dealing with crazy people all the time. So I became a film producer where none of those things ever happened.
Yeah.
But I think that he probably would have preferred for me to go into a more conventional sort of business, whatever thing. But I was basically obsessed with this since I was 13 and wanted to do it and worked really hard at it even then. And so I think he just kind of knew that this is like the only thing that I could do. I only ever wanted to work in film and before that be a professional baseball player, which is why you asked me on this podcast, even though I was never very good at it. So I think that he doesn't really understand any of this, but is happy that now I am employed with a company and not just, freelancing in the wind as I have been in the last 15 years. So I think he's happy enough that I'm employed similarly.
Hey, we're all happy that you're employed, first of all.
Yeah. I have to share your initial observation that you really picked, from a mostly outsider perspective, what seems to me to be by far the most stressful job that you can have almost in any like artistic field. It just seems like, it's pure personality management, scheduling, budgeting, basically everything that in other fields people say like, God, good thing this is only a small percentage of my job. So you're one of our troops of the film industry.
And the best part of it is you get none of the glory or attention or credit as well.
Everyone assumes it's just like a do nothing paycheck.
Right.
Which must feel really good.
Yeah.
And, honestly, this film does represent kind of a producer getting the chance to get the credit and basically stepping on his own dick and falling on his face.
Although now he has directed more movies. I mean, I think he's in the sort of direct video action pipeline.
He's become a Neeson guy. I think maybe because Jaume Collet-Serra he's been captured by The Rock. I think Neeson needed a new guy, and he found old Bobby.
Mm-hmm.
And he also started as, Clint's first AD and then moved into his producer and then, was given the chance to direct. And that's something of a pipeline of mine too. I kind of did it the oppositely where I started as a director and then had to take work as a first AD because I couldn't get a movie made and then kind of circled around to producing from there. But it is interesting because especially when it's like such a loose set that he kind of runs and also is often in the movie, the line between like producer, first AD, and director can get kind of blurred in like potentially in a positive way if the people work well together. But, similarly with Soderbergh and his guy, Gregory Jacobs, who's his first AD, if Soderbergh's directing and shooting the movie, the first AD like steps up in certain ways, I would imagine.
I would imagine so, yeah.
Something that I was considering in this film, and I rewatched Moneyball as well in preparation, and I don't think it's a failure of the farm team system. I love the idea of, giving people a chance to work up to it. I don't think it means the system is bad. I think it just sometimes happens that, you have a Billy Bean type figure that gets up to the big leagues. Maybe it's just not the exact right job for him. That's okay. Maybe they find a different spot. I mean, he's produced many of the Clint Eastwood films that we love, or AD'd many of the films that we love. So
I'm going to push back on that. I don't think Billy Bean's produced a single Clint Eastwood film.
You're right.
Does anybody... I watched Moneyball again on a plane like a couple months ago, and I can't remember. Did anybody call him Mr. Bean at any point?
I don't think so.
I don't know. And I watched it.
They were like, by whatever you do, you can improv, but do not say Mr. Bean. This movie cannot survive that. Sorry, Chadd, I stepped on you.
I don't really think that the problem with this movie is Robert Lorenz. Yeah. I think it's a screenplay problem, basically.
Yeah,
it's just
you're right.
It's just a first draft, that they shot.
We have to ask our second question before we can get into the thing that anyone has.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry,
tuned in to hear.
Great.
Ian, did you go last time or did I?
You know what? I don't remember, but you go ahead, my friend.
Okay, I got a good one. Did you have, and if so, can you tell us about the star athlete from your high school? Who was there like a phenom that everybody knew this person was going places?
Yeah, I have to think. I've like blacked out so much from high school, but there was, we had a pretty good, I went to like a suburban public school, and so we had really pretty good sports teams, and I think our football team like won this one state at some point. I did not pay attention to any of that, but we did have a kind of phenom baseball player named Ben, who I don't remember his last name, or I shouldn't say it anyway, but that I played with kind of throughout middle school and stuff. And then he was like the star shortstop in high school. And I believe he went on to at least play or try out for some farm team in Iowa, and then that's the last I remember. I don't know if he ever like made it professionally at all, but that's it. Yeah. So we had him. He was actually a pretty nice guy and was always nice to me, even though I wasn't very good and lost us games sometimes.
Well, that's nice. I mean, that's true character, I think.
Yeah.
What about you, Ian?
We had a couple. We had plenty of great players. I lived down the street and went to high school with Abby Dahlkemper, who used to play for the women's national team, the soccer national team.
Oh, Cool.
She was the year under me. She also went to UCLA. Couldn't tell if it was just a neighborly thing or she just knew me for so long that she got confused about how uncool I was. But similarly, like Chadd was saying, she was always very nice to me. So lovely. KK Clark was an Olympic water polo player the year above me.
How is the Clark spelled?
Clark, I believe. Why?
Yeah. Just checking on because of the name. Yeah.
Okay. And then in college, my roommate, I'm saying all these people's last names, but they're professional athletes, so hopefully this is fine.
Yeah.
Marcos Giron, or Giron, I don't know what he goes by these days, but he was ranked like 45th, the best tennis player in the world for a while. He went to play the U.S. Open. He and I used to play a bunch of Xbox together. Nice guy, quiet guy. So across the board, I don't know a ton of in fact, I feel like it's more of a high school prom king thing to be kind of a shitty dude. Whereas I feel like a lot of the professional athletes, maybe it's just the sports themselves, like swimming and tennis, are maybe not as inclined to have these big, cruel personalities that we see in Bo on screen here.
Yeah.
What about you, Jake?
I had a couple. Two come to mind. There was a guy named Mike Spooner who was like a champion. He was an incredible cross-country runner.
Ooh.
Like, I think he was under 4-minute mile in high school, kind of.
That's wild.
Like, and everybody would say, his lungs are like 30% bigger than the average person. That's why he can run so. Like, he, just a freak. He was in my sister's grade. I didn't really know him. Everybody seemed to think he was a nice guy and didn't interact with him, except one time I was on the opposing team in some kind of game of running around in the neighborhood, and I just thought, oh, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
And I'm looking him up. He's, at least in 2021, he was named cross-country coach of the Carson Newman Eagles, which seems to be maybe a college team. I don't know.
Okay.
But he's working in it. And then I also, when I was a freshman in high school, the outgoing quarterback of the football team was drafted as the quarterback, or whatever. He went to UVA to be the quarterback of the University of Virginia Cavaliers, which is like a big deal sports team. He does not have his own Wikipedia page. However, there is a section of the 2008 Virginia Cavaliers football team page called Peter Lollick Controversy.
Uh-oh. Now,
yeah, Peter Lollick. Chadd, are you a college football guy? Do you perhaps remember this?
No, I mean, okay. I am in the sense that I'm from Columbus, Ohio, so the Buckeyes are like a huge thing, but I don't really pay that much attention.
Got it. Probably for the best. Peter Lollick was drafted, big deal. Everybody was impressed with him. I think his dad might have been the football coach also, like one of those sort of bred from birth to be a professional football player. But he kept getting busted with alcohol underage and then was on supervised probation and did it again. And basically just like within the first year, because he was like a freshman playing on the team and he just fucked it up. Also, someone told me, I don't know this for a fact, if you showed me a picture of this guy, I wouldn't know. But one of my friends told me that, he can't read. So he might have...
Certain that's not true. I don't know. It seems like the kind of athlete slander that they get.
Yeah. Anyway, I hope he's found
peace.
I don't know. Yeah. Don't know the guy. All right. That's the two questions. Time to talk about the movie. This is Trouble with the Curve. So I knew of this movie. Came out in 2012. As we've mentioned, it's directed by Robert Lorenz, Clint's longtime producing partner or producer. He's in a ton of the behind the scenes sort of featurette stuff I watched on all the Blu-rays to prepare for these last, 15 episodes or something. Extremely kind of dull guy in a way that I would guess makes for a good producer. Like he seems like kind of I would trust this guy to handle logistics, But this is the first film starring Clint but not directed by him since Casper. Interestingly, came out just a year prior to, do you guys remember Fading Gigolo?
Yes. John Turturro, Woody Allen.
Turturro directed Woody Allen.
That Turturro directed, yes.
That was maybe the first movie Allen is in without directing since Ants, probably.
Mm-hmm.
So, just, interesting. I guess he's in...
it up.
Exactly. It was a time of calamity. A lot of
Great
people have been saying
turmoil
that.
in the American heart. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And Clint plays I mean, it seems like a slam dunk, or at least, it certainly makes sense. Clint is a sort of an aging baseball scout who is kind of being pushed out of the profession by some young whippersnappers. He's got a estranged daughter. I don't know, like there's nothing particularly on paper. It makes a little bit of sense, but this is a script that came across Clint's desk, and he and Bob were talking about, I don't know if anybody calls him Bob, talking about making it, and Robert Lorenz had been wanting to direct for a long time, and Clint says, why don't you direct it? And he does. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost as if they both saw Moneyball and it pissed them off so much that they wanted to make a biopic of one of the guys and how of one of the
scouts.
Wrong scouts, and how they're actually right, and that instincts and people's parents loving them matter more than numbers.
Yeah, and I would imagine that the best way forward is between the two of those, right? I mean, for the folks who haven't seen Moneyball recently, or ever, real story about Jonah Hill, who went to Yale, incorporating the ideas of kind of a fringe baseball dork who was really into statistics, who basically said you should stop spending lots of money on a few big deal players, 5-tool players, and instead you can spend less money by assembling a team of people who are merely very competent baseball players, and they will actually add up to more runs than if you have like A-Rod and then a bunch of losers. Which, I don't know, on paper sounds closer to... There's something progressive about the idea, I guess, but then when it ends up meaning that the front office can spend less money on its employees, that's when we get into like icky territory.
I think it's tricky because, like you're saying, on the one hand, pushing for better, more efficient systems. I think on the left, people are sometimes accused of being allergic to data or allergic to trying to find efficient systems to do basically anything. And I think it's okay to see that only in the territory, I think, what you're implying here, Jake, where if we want to have people who are in it for the love, the art, if that helps us focus on the human investment, that can be really nice. I mean, I work in sustainable farming, and there's a huge debate about to what extent you should use machines, to what extent you should trust like industrial ag data, right? And it's very tricky. And certainly I'm sympathetic to the fact that just sometimes digging something by hand means you are more aware, you care more about what's going to happen, you care more about like sludge that's going to come off your farm into a river and pollute the ocean or something, right? Just by being involved, it maybe makes the whole process more human. But this is like the worst possible example, and I think the film makes a terrible argument for why you should use scouts. I mean, the big conclusion, just to jump to it, without talking about the details of it, but depends on somebody making an observation that a computer absolutely would make, and with more, like a bigger sample size than the 5 games that Clint watches. It's insane that this is the big reveal that the player is not capable of something, because that's what stats would reveal, right? You see him trying to hit the same pitch 3,000 times from certain types of pitchers in different conditions. You could say, you know what? He can't do this. We're not going to get this guy. So he has the titular trouble with the curve. Exactly.
It's also insane in the positive, again, skipping to the end, but like that Amy Adams observes this kid throwing in his backyard and immediately thinks that he can pitch in the majors. And it's like, major league hitters are a huge factor in his success. And she saw him pitch against hitters.
A catching child. Yeah.
She saw him throwing casually at a little boy.
She didn't even see him play in a game.
Yeah, I mean, the casting of the two players you have as, what's the guy's name, as Bo what's his nuts?
I think it's Bo Great, if I'm not mistaken.
He's such a stinker, that guy.
It's not Bo Greitz. It's not the guy who
Oh,
Clint
no?
gave a bunch of money to
Shoot.
go find POWs in Cambodia who weren't there.
Okay.
No, the kid's name is Joe Massengill as Bo Gentry. I mean, his name is Gentry.
Yeah.
He is a little, like, he's so white, he's ruddy. He's a little southern boy who's so sure of himself. He's always talking about, like, visualizing. I think he said, I'm visualizing mega endorsements.
He did say that, yeah.
And then he's very rude to the peanut boy at Zeb B. Vance Field. Of course, Zebulon Baird Vance was a lawyer and politician from North Carolina and a Confederate officer during the Civil War. Owned slaves, you know.
Yep.
One of these classic guys who still has a high school baseball field named after him. And the peanut guy, whose name is Rigoberto Sanchez, as Amy Adams says, in like full Alex Trebek code switching.
Correct, yeah.
Really weird. This kid is played by, I believe, an actual like baseball player, or you know, a young baseball player.
He looks like it. He can actually throw.
Yeah, it's cool to watch.
But much better than he can.
That was one of the parts of the movie I enjoyed. Yeah.
His name is Jay Galloway. He was born in Asuncion, Paraguay, and raised in Atlanta. And since then, he's worked on like the second unit on Ant-Man and the Wasp. He was an additional crew on 1517 to Paris. So it seems like he's gotten kind of a crew career going since working on this movie, which is nice to see. But yeah, he is, you know, it's a white kid and a Latin kid, and the white kid is disrespectful to the Latin kid. And then Amy Adams, because she's got the eye, she can see past these racial blind spots. By the way, our guest on next week's episode is Rachel Blindspots. Hey, it's just a little joke. But yeah, I feel like we jumped into it a little bit. What was your guys? Did you guys know about this movie? Do you remember? What were you coming to it with? Had you seen it before? Where are we?
I had not seen this before. I distinctly remember the trailer, and this was in the era of my just getting out of college that I was kind of getting Clint pilled again with Gran Torino, which I think is a masterpiece.
Oh, sorry.
I didn't listen to your episode about it.
Well, spoilers.
And then, so I was kind of, you know, interested in him again and like wanting to pay attention to what he did, but then he sort of, Invictus looked really boring, and so I didn't see that. And then Hereafter seemed really weird, and I didn't hear that it was good then. I have now seen Hereafter and think it's really great.
Yeah.
And then J. Edgar I did see in theaters, but this was just one that I sort of thought looked bad, and he didn't direct it anyway, so I just kind of skipped it. And then, you know, then he kind of comes back with like the 1-2 punch of Jersey Boys and American Sniper, both of which I think are good. But yeah, I knew about it. It looked like barely a movie, and I didn't watch it for, 11 years, and now I did, and confirmed my suspicions.
Barely a movie. Yeah. I remember it coming out. I found out, been looking through like Getty Images and stuff at Clint, been doing an intermittent series on Twitter called Clint Westwood, just pictures of Clint Eastwood at movie premieres in Westwood, California. And I found out that in 2012, when this movie came out, they had the big premiere at is it the Bruin or the Fox, Ian, where they do the premieres? There's two theaters across from each other in Westwood. Premieres. Okay, the big one. They did it at the big one. Clint is there, Amy Adams is there, Justin Timberlake is there, and I believe, Ian, you and I were within 2 or 3 miles of this at the time, which is sort of weird to think about. But I remember seeing the posters. I knew somehow that maybe I had just seen because I wasn't a Clint guy at all then, but maybe I had seen like a headline about how he's in a movie that he didn't direct. For some reason, I remembered it being directed by like a French guy. Like I think in my head it was, I'd slotted in like, what's the wild guy? Was that a French guy? Who am I thinking of?
Yeah, Jean-Marc Vallée, which is funny because now Clint uses his DP.
Oh yeah, the new guy,
yeah.
The after Tom Stern. Uh-huh. Okay, interesting. Because I think I thought it was a French guy, and maybe I was like, well, Clint, he loves he's beloved by the French. Maybe he's doing a favor for one of them. But I also remember thinking it was weird that Justin Timberlake was in the film. Like he doesn't exist in the same world as Clint Eastwood. And then lastly, right. I think I've talked about this on some other episode, but in the heady days of At Midnight and the sort of hashtag games, there was one on Twitter. There was one that was like describe your penis with a movie title.
Good, yeah.
And I remember thinking, if my parents didn't follow me on Twitter, this would be so funny. But they did, so I didn't post it. But that's mostly what I recall of this. Ian, what was your prior impression?
Basically the same, unfortunately. It seems like, looking at the box office, it seems like everybody basically had the same reaction, which is, we're aware of this movie. We're not interested in seeing this film necessarily, which is, again, strange because there's nothing about it that's objectionable. And I saw Moneyball in theaters, and I don't know. I mean, I'm not a big baseball guy, so it's not impossible that I would have been invested, but...
that's called softball.
Yeah.
Big baseball? That's softball. Different name for it.
Yeah, I think everything about it. I had the same thought about Justin. I don't hate him, but it's just I think it probably brings out the worst elements. I think in recent Clint films, it's like too much sheen, too much surface, too much like by the book instincts. So to me, Justin has a lot of that, which is why I think he can be used surgically in like an Inside Llewyn Davis. If you need kind of a square, a little bit like a charming square, that's good.
I feel comfortable saying that I hate Justin Timberlake. Okay. I think it seems like a bad guy.
I don't know
He's
about his life.
thrown a number of women under the bus. Well, you may have seen something he did at a famous sporting event and then kind of managed not to catch any flack from, if you remember that.
Mm-hmm.
He also seems to have been quite cruel to Britney Spears, which
right. Yep.
I'm against any and all cruelty to Britney Spears. I feel comfortable saying that. And I also think he has no screen presence. I hate him in movies. He's effective in The Social Network, I would say, probably because Fincher wrung it out of him. Like, Fincher doing the opposite of the Clint and thus Lorenz method of one take. I think I would imagine that the 95th take of everything that Timberlake does in that movie is the one that got into the final product. But I just think he sucks in every way. He sucks energy out of the movie. He seems like a phony. He doesn't seem like a real person. I hate his little face. I hate his little voice.
Yeah, I think he's absolutely dire in this movie. And if you, friend of the show and past guest Marie Barty, goes so far to say she thinks he is bad in The Social Network, I don't really agree with that. But
I mean, I respect it. I respect that take.
Yeah. But I think he can be used strategically and surgically by great directors like Fincher and the Coen brothers, and not that Clint isn't a great director, also didn't direct this, but he doesn't really, I don't think he really directs people. Like if you think that Timberlake is borderline bad in The Social Network after 100 takes, wait till you see him with one take.
I mean, it often seems like he doesn't understand the line. Like he won't put emphasis on the word that should have emphasis.
Yeah, that's always tough.
Yeah.
And I don't buy him. I mean, I don't know if in his life he knows anything about or cares about sports at all, but I don't buy him as someone that does in this at all.
Yeah, me either. He also doesn't have a announcer voice. Like his character's aspiration is to become an announcer. He doesn't have the timbre for it.
It makes for a really surreal scene when he's at the bar. He does this thing that elicits like a spontaneous standing ovation from a bar of people who hear him say just the most unremarkable bit of patter. And it's insane. It feels like, I mean, I was also thinking about Lynch because of Matthew Lillard, but it has like a Lynchian quality where people are like not acting the way that they should be acting. Everybody around him is like making him feel right about this.
Yeah. Justin Timberlake might have been good in like Inland Empire.
Sure, yeah. Yep.
Just because he has that sort of non-real quality. I mean, it's not even, I don't mean this as a particular knock. Like he has a voice that is well suited to the kind of music he makes, and that's just not the type of voice that is well suited to, like Lou Rawls would probably be a great baseball announcer, and Justin Timberlake isn't. It's fine.
Yep.
But goddamn, this movie was written by a very interesting guy named Randy Brown, who, apart from this, has only written one movie that has been produced. Are you guys aware of this? Did you see this?
I did see this, yeah.
No, but I did read, there's some controversy about this screenplay.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
Randy Brown, his only other produced screenplay is for Miracles from Heaven, the 2016 faith-based film starring Jennifer Garner and Martin Henderson from The Ring. And speaking of Britney Spears, is it the Toxic video? He's also in Torque. He's in a Britney Spears video from the time. He's a New Zealand actor. He's nice. Nice to see. But yeah, I just remember the only thing I know about Miracles from Heaven is that the trailer for it played in front of The Force Awakens when I saw it at the ArcLight in like a big packed theater, and people were just like cackling with laughter at the. This is a Los Angeles crowd, I guess, but it's like a little girl who falls out of a tree and like sees Jesus, and then later, basically unrelatedly, she has a weird disease and then is miraculously cured. I believe is based on a true story. But yeah, there's some controversy about somebody sued Warner Brothers, claiming that they had written a screenplay called Omaha, an unproduced screenplay about an old college baseball coach working through a difficult relationship with his grown daughter, as well as other plot elements. This film does also have other plot elements.
First of all, I don't know why you sue to try to claim credit for this fucking screenplay.
It makes less than its budget.
But also, it goes to show, I mean, just kind of how generic this is.
Right.
Like, anybody could have written this. This could be... The other elements, too, are like, it's a baseball coach instead of a scout. But, like, this could be anything. You could put this template on any job that was, like, becoming irrelevant, essentially.
Yes.
Like, or an old-timey person.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, it's also, like, doesn't Moneyball happen after? Because that script was written in 1998, the guy claims. Although, there's also, like, apparently it had laptops in it. And so there was some suggestion that he might have fabricated, like he might have updated the script to make it sound more like Trouble with the Curve before he sued or whatever. But Moneyball takes place in like the early 2000s, right?
2003, yeah.
So it's after this. It just seems, it's like one of those things, like we talked about on the last time you were on the show, Chad, like with A Perfect World, how the original version of the script, there was no prior relationship between the Clint character and the Kevin Costner character. It's like, what was the movie then? What's even in there?
Right. And also, just so you know, like, the whole, like, screenplays getting stolen thing is a complete myth. That does not happen. It's not worth it. No one... Right. I mean, I'm sure there are exceptions, I suppose, but, like, if you're an aspiring screenwriter out there and you are trying to make someone sign an NDA before they'll read it, like, that's fine. I'm happy to not read your screenplay, you know? Like, it's...
Well, it's also just, like, I don't understand the gamble of copying an unproduced screenplay. Like, there's no sense that... Why would you even bother if the movie so far has been rejected by Hollywood? Like, what's the purpose of... Like, well, maybe if my name is on it, or if I change the characters very slightly, but not enough to get me out of being sued.
Like, Malpaso, their production, like, if there was, they would just buy you off. Like, it's not that much money.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
He bought a screenplay based on a tour book guide about Alcatraz from a museum gift shop. So obviously he's not opposed to.
Yeah, he bought the book like from a one of those racks that you can spin around. For Escape from Alcatraz.
Like, right, exactly. Like, WGA scale is like, which an unknown writer would be paid under, is like $80,000. Like, they're not risking being sued over this for your shitty screenplay, dude.
Bizarre. So now that we've told that guy off, stop listening to the podcast. All right, I think he's gone. Let's do a quick rundown of the plot, such as it is. Clint Eastwood plays Gus Lobel, who is a baseball scout, one of the guys, as we've mentioned, who in Moneyball, one of those like old character actor guys sitting around a table talking about, I mean, you gotta admit, this is a weird fucking job. Guys who are like really invested in strange high schoolers.
Oh, it's a fascinating area to explore.
It is, but just like the actual sort of the literal job of like talking about how impressed you are by the way a 17-year-old uses his body. sort of an odd thing to me, but he's one of these guys. His eyesight is going. He's also sort of the front office. He works for the Braves, the Atlanta Braves. Bad name for a baseball team. The front office, Robert Patrick, Matthew Lillard, these guys they want him out. They're applying the sabermetrics, they call it. This is the application of statistics as pioneered by Bill James and Jonah Hill, the actor, to sort of take the guesswork out of acquiring new baseball players. And he's got a friend in John Goodman. Honestly, kind of surprised that John Goodman hasn't popped up in a Clint movie before.
We got a bunch of like this new generation of older character actors here that all fit, I think, in the world. The law partners all feel like they could be.
Yeah, well,
Bob
Gunton is in A Perfect World, I think. He's just in Midnight in the Garden. He's not in Perfect World. He's one of several guys in Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil who had played Sweeney Todd on stage.
Yep.
He's one of the guys in the partners of the firm where Gus's daughter, Mickey, works, played by Amy Adams. Now, I think I alluded to this to you, Chadd, before we started recording, but basically any coverage of this film across the entire internet is very happy to tell you that they wanted Sandra Bullock for this role, and then she couldn't do it or dropped out or something, and Amy Adams was sloppy seconds, which, first of all, I would be very hurt if I were Amy Adams.
Rude. That's interesting. Yeah. I have to think about that because I actually think Amy Adams is kind of good in this movie.
Yeah, and she's bad.
I think she's good in all of the dramatic scenes, and I think in the comedic scenes she's kind of lost.
Right. I mean, she doesn't have, I think she's probably a better actor than Sandra Bullock, but not a better movie star, right? Like, so it's like, maybe this movie, so that it is not so sleepy, needs just some like movie star wattage, and like maybe Sandra Bullock would have brought that. But yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. I didn't realize that.
This came out the week after The Master. That's
I know.
Crazy.
It's the same year as The Master.
The following week. They're both September.
And I mean, this is her era, right? I mean, this is like Doubt, The Fighter,
after this, right?
The Master.
Yeah. American Hustle a couple years after this. Yeah.
Yeah. And then she starts in the Snyderverse shit, and it all goes to hell.
I was thinking about Adams. She's very funny have you guys seen Drop Dead Gorgeous recently?
No. I haven't in a long time, but I mean, I know she's very good in it, as is everybody, yeah.
She's good in it. It's quite funny. I like that movie quite a bit. She is so fucking jacked in that movie. She has insane biceps in that movie. And there's a little bit of it here. There's like one scene where she's in a t-shirt or something, and for a second you just see this kind of like bicep like pop out.
Good for her, man.
It's I don't know. It's like an interesting wrinkle. Yeah, Catch Me If You Can. She pops up and then sort of goes back to not being famous for a few years, which is interesting.
And then Junebug is where she pops.
Yeah, I was thinking because she is really funny in Talladega Nights, but I think the humor there comes from her playing it really straight. Yeah. Like her character's very earnest. So like her best scene in this movie, I think, is when they're in the diner, right? And she, like kind of the big, blow up. Why did you abandon me scene where she's just going acting chops rather than trying to be like charming romantic lead or whatever.
Right. And you're talking about, I mean, the movies where she's funny, like these are directed by like at the time, the best directors of comedy in the world that like won't, the Drop Dead Gorgeous guy was like the director for The State, like, and, Adam McKay. And it's like, no one's giving you anything on a Clint set. Right. Like you're on your own. So maybe Sandy might have been better because she doesn't need anyone to tell her how to be a charming movie star.
Yeah. I don't like Sandra Bullock. I can't really explain it. I just kind of have a problem with her. She doesn't do it for me. I think also some of it was the marrying the Jesse James guy, the motorcycle guy. Just seems like to want to spend time with that guy, you must be kind of close to a Nazi, and she also speaks fluent German. I haven't heard anything. This is
really? I don't know any of this.
This is pure speculation, except for the fact that. But Sandra Bullock and I also, she's from the Northern Virginia area, as am I, or I lived there for a long time, and we both appeared many years apart on the same local, basically children's game show. It's called It's Academic. For a while, it was the longest running game show in the United States. And it's like a academic decathlon thing that they air on Saturday mornings on NBC, sponsored by Giant Foods. And she appeared as a cheerleader because our high school team would bring the freshman cheerleaders. They wouldn't give us even JV, but the freshman cheerleaders would come along and cheer in between, cut to commercial break while they're all going woo. and she appeared on that as well. So Sandy and I are basically colleagues, and I don't care for her.
That's why you feel comfortable saying this. I mean,
yeah.
At a certain point, it doesn't matter. Chadd was correct when he said the script is just tough. I mean, the "You Are My Sunshine" stuff, I don't know. Is there an actor in the film who makes that work?
I could not believe because Clint's going to the grave of his dear departed wife.
What's that gravestone say again? Remind me.
I don't remember. What does it say?
May the Lord grant you extra innings. You didn't see this?
Oh, yeah, I do remember that. Which, like, what does it mean? Like, she's died.
It sounds like let you live longer. That's the one thing you must not put on a gravestone. Give her a couple more years.
Yeah. Here lies Ian Ryan, still alive. Like, no. But yeah, like Clint starts reciting "You Are My Sunshine."
Well, right before that, I thought the voice breaking stuff was not bad. The whole scene is just chumpy nonsense, but he's like speaking straight, not crying. We've seen this a few times before from him. I like this. And then he starts to sing "You Are My Sunshine."
Yeah, and it keeps
and then
going.
He sings the whole thing.
And you're like the whole time you're like, surely this is the last line. Surely.
Like, if he had just kind of muttered off, like, "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine, please don't take my sunshine away," it could have been kind of powerful and sweet and sort of touching. But then you have to sit there and watch him sing it kind of off key for, a minute and a half.
Yeah, and then there's an actual version of "You Are My Sunshine" that plays that is just like grocery store music. Like, what is this? The soundtrack is awful in a way
so strange. We've had some bad ones. This one's different than bad.
That we should talk about, because that I think is one of I don't really see this movie being directed that differently if Clint directed it, other than it might have been better, just I don't know, because but like the score is something he would never have done.
Yeah, so it's like his entire Malpaso team. Tom Stern shoots it. Joel Cox and Gary D. Roach direct. They direct. I wish they edit the film.
Edit it, yeah.
And then the music is by Marco Beltrami, who is a kind of a workhorse Hollywood score guy. But yeah, the music is like I wanted to ask you, Chadd, generally, like what do you see as the Clintisms here, and what's very clearly not Clint at the controls?
I don't know. It's hard to assess, because I think for better or largely worse in this case, it looks like a Clint movie in terms of how it's shot and art directed. And it just and I'm curious too, because it's like we say like, oh, this is the first movie let's not count Casper. What's the one before that?
It would be In the Line of Fire, I think.
In the Line of Fire, right. But before that, like, mostly when he didn't direct something, it was directed by one of his guys, right?
Yeah.
So it would be
he had a farm team. He had like a farm system, basically.
Yeah, his stunt coordinator or his
like
second
Don
unit
Siegel
director or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Right, except for that, right? So, like, he basically, and I'm just very curious as to, like, he's ghost directing all those movies. Like, you hear from the actors, like, so when does he choose to actually do it or not take a credit or whatever? And what is the logic behind that? Because the only two real filmmakers he's worked with that aren't, in the last, 40 years are Wolfgang Peterson once and Don Siegel before that. And that was really from before he started directing. Yeah. So,
and he's like turned down Spielberg, it seems like Spielberg was
Spielberg's tried to cast him. I think maybe even Scorsese's tried to cast
John
him.
Carpenter, I think, wanted him for something.
Totally.
Yeah, it would have been great.
I don't think he wants to work with another real filmmaker that will like expect him to listen to them. Which I understand, but I'm just curious as to like, if he's not directing the script, is it because he thinks it's not very good? And then if that's the case, then why is he doing it?
It seems like a favor to Lorenz, to get him the credit. And now he's...
Yeah, that could be the answer.
He directed a movie called The Marksman with
Sean Penn. That was his...
It's Liam Neeson.
Oh.
You're thinking of the other movie that I also thought might have been The Marksman that I will look up now.
I thought that was Sean Penn's Liam Neeson
No,
movie.
it was,
you know what I'm saying?
what's it called? Sean Penn is in the Angry Birds movie? Sorry, I'm getting distracted. The Gunman.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Where he plays a character named Terrier.
Cool.
But yeah, it's another like old guy with a gun movie, and apparently I haven't seen The Marksman yet. We might talk about it on the Patreon, but it's like seems like it's Neeson sort of playing a Clint type character, which is interesting. And directed by Robert Lorenz. He's got another Neeson movie that he's working on now. So that's nice of Clint, I guess. But like, I don't know. He's in the middle of a 3-year break.
Right, but then he comes back with two really difficult movies. I mean, like Jersey Boys is a period piece musical,
with like live
and then
music,
right, and like based on a beloved stage show that like there were definitely expectations for, and I don't know if you've seen Jersey Boys yet, but it's pretty good, and then American Sniper, which is like this obviously also huge movie, so. He just kind of tossed off a favor to his friend is what it seems like.
Which, we support tossing favors to your friends, but leave me out of it,
Yeah.
I wonder if he would have directed this movie if Lorenz didn't want to. I feel like he just wouldn't have gotten
a more
made,
interesting
probably.
question, because I'm inclined to agree with you guys that in general, I don't know if a Clint version of this is that different. I mean, he doesn't change scripts. He doesn't direct actors, like you're saying. All the guys that are on it, I mean, it's Tom Stern DPing. Maybe it looks a little bit more like Friends with Benefit-y.
There's more light.
Family friendly. That's what I was going to say. Like a little bit cleaner.
I think, yeah.
But I agree. I don't really think it's that different because it's not as if Clint is going to allow his first AD to make him do more than 2 takes,
Yeah,
like,
and there's an interview that Front Row Features did with Matthew Lillard to promote a Front Row Features film that I don't remember the name of, that some people cite as evidence that Clint ghost directed the film, which is Front Row Features says, have you read this?
Yeah, I saw that too, but there's no evidence needed. He did ghost direct the movie. Like that's what he does. Like when it's one of his guys. This isn't an investigation that is needed.
Lillard basically says like Rob adopted the same one take thing. Everything about the Clint process was there. Do we think that Clint would cast Timberlake? I mean, there's no way to know whose decision it was, but
I mean, again, I don't really think that Lorenz is doing anything that Clint doesn't approve of. Maybe he wouldn't have done that, but I also think that like Timberlake was pretty hot at that time after, The Social Network and was like, being in movies.
Everyone's looking forward to Runner.
Of course, yeah.
And In Time.
In Time came out before this. In Time, also shot by Roger Deakins. A cool-looking movie. It's stupid, but...
Yeah, a cool-looking movie that is boring and stupid.
I can't allow anybody... I've seen this being floated on Twitter.
No. It's not good.
This cannot be reclaimed, this movie.
It's not good, but it's got cool shots in it. And then one really, really bad CG car roll. After Casino Royale, everybody, there's been like an arms race to see who can do the craziest CGI flipping car, and we gotta stop this.
I know we're all like baffled by how Andrew Nicole fell off so hard after starting off so strong, but the fact is that he did, and we're not gonna pretend that these movies
Wasn't
are good.
He making a movie about the New Zealand mosque shootings, starring Rose Byrne as Jacinda Ardern?
Christ. I do not want to know about that.
I don't. Did I make that up? Is he doing anything now?
It makes sense because he made like a drone warfare movie or something.
Good Kill. He co-wrote The Terminal, or is a story credit on The Terminal? Interesting.
Yeah, that was probably back in the day. But Gattaca and The Truman Show were his, first screenplays, basically.
Yeah. Anyway. Amy Adams is his daughter. She's a lawyer. Yeah. She so she wants to make partners. She's been working her ass off. She's been saying she's worked every Saturday for 7 years. And there's a little hint at like the boys club aspect of the legal profession, because Todd, the dreaded Todd, is also in contention for the partnership. and then she has to go to North Carolina to be with her dad after John Goodman
begins to suspect
asks her to,
that
and
there's something wrong with him. With
something
his
up.
vision.
Yeah. And wouldn't you know it, they don't get along so great. He is scouting this Beau kid, as we mentioned. Justin Timberlake enters the picture as Johnny the Flaming Torch Storm. What is the character's name?
Johnny the Flame Flanagan.
Johnny the Flame Flanagan.
And we did skip over, it's not significant, but a little bit funny to me.
Whatever we skipped.
That Scott Eastwood is cast as a child who just needs to see his parents to have a better life. It's a very unfortunate thing for somebody.
Dude. Yeah, well,
how does he know? How does he know what his kids need from him so much in his art and just can't talk to them?
It's so crazy. Can't acknowledge them. My girlfriend I have to call her out. She had or call out her very funny line when Scott Eastwood came on screen. She goes, "Man, Clint loves this guy," which is very funny.
Does he?
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, the crazy thing about this movie is this is a movie where a woman playing his daughter tells Clint only a coward leaves their kid, and yet it is boring. Like, how is this not compelling?
We've seen him as a failed dad before, and we've even seen his partners get mad at him, right, in previous iterations of this. But this is maybe the first one where, I mean, we kind of got Laura Linney getting mad at him, but I think this was much better. I mean, this is a much clearer explication of why he has failed as a father, and it's still not interesting. Yeah. In fact, the direction they push it turns out to be unearned and borderline tasteless.
Like the kind of like the nastiest shit that Hollywood movies do, like sexual abuse as shorthand.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh my God. I like blacked out that whole
so the movie
thing.
starts with
Jesus
this.
Christ.
The movie starts with this like pretty compelling Tom Sturny image of a black horse running at the camera in darkness.
Yes.
And for a second you're like, okay, what's going on here? And then it turns out that Gus was bringing Mickey to every game or whatever, and then brought her to there was a horse that they let run around the track at a baseball game, and Mickey got away from him, and he found her in a shed being just like a second after a weird man started abusing her. And then he goes Dominic Toretto on this guy.
He does, yeah.
Beats him to within an inch of his life.
This is 4/5 of the way into the film. We've gotten no indication. Again, I'm not saying you can't handle sexual abuse in a film. Obviously, it's a significant part of real life.
Amanda, my famous podcast girlfriend, pointed this out. But like, why couldn't she get like knocked over by the horse?
Yeah.
Why couldn't she? You know, there's so many other like, I'm not able to pay attention to my daughter things that can happen to her that aren't child sexual abuse. Like.
Right, and it's already flimsy anyway. They use it as a way to, like, this is why he pushed her away or sent her away or whatever. It's like, it's like, oh, so my child, like, almost got molested, so therefore I'm going to spend less time with them.
Yeah.
And
why don't you get married, motherfucker? Like, why don't you...
Like, I don't understand. Like, the whole... You're right, the horse thing would be better, but that still doesn't really fix the logic.
Can I ask you guys what... Because they cut to some... footage of a younger Clint. This is something I love. I mean, you know, speaking of Soderbergh, he does this in The Limey with Terrence Stamp. Did you guys? What movie did you guys assume it was?
Oh, I didn't. I mean, I might be an idiot, but I thought that was like done. I thought it was like really good makeup. But I could be totally wrong.
You are, but I like the confidence. Ian, did you have a guess?
No, but I had this exact consideration. I am gonna guess. To me, this was like very early 80s Clint, maybe, or late 70s.
I assumed it was Tightrope, I think, because that's also a movie where Clint is
a little unhinged,
defending his daughter, and also does some punching at the camera. It is from Firefox, which is a year after. I guess it's just, you know, that movie happens to have shots of Clint punching at someone you can't see.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's from Firefox.
I've never seen Firefox, but yeah, I did have the thought of like, they put way more effort into the makeup of this than they would normally in a Clint Eastwood movie. If you've seen J. Edgar
J. Edgar costs apparently about half what this movie cost.
That's crazy. I mean, I know,
and I know. I guess
Amy
you have
Adams
to
and
like,
JT
and you
budget,
have to
but-
maybe.
Well, wait, where are you? Where
I
are
mean,
you getting
Wikipedia,
that? I'm seeing.
but
Okay, I'm seeing on IMDb Pro they both cost 35 million for J. Edgar and 30
oh,
for
because
Trouble with
Wikipedia
the
says
Curve.
60 for this.
Maybe
which-
it's
No way.
a P&A budget.
No.
thing?
Can't
no
all
way.
afford IMDb Pro. We're not all Hollywood bigwigs like you, Chad. I have a Hollywood bigwig question for you, actually, because so enter Johnny the Flame.
Yeah.
And this movie becomes kind of a half-assed rom-com for a while, to the film's significant detriment. I think if the Timberlake character is not in the movie, it's at least 50% better. But they're on a date, Amy Adams and Justin Timberlake, and there's some people clogging, doing some kind of, or what do they call it?
Clogging.
Clowning,
Yep.
clown dancing. And Amy Adams knows about this, gives him like the Wikipedia top line explanation of what it is, and then they do it. Chad, have you seen the secret Hollywood list of mildly interesting regional things that come up in rom-coms? There's just every rom-com has a little thing that they teach you about, like just a bit of business where it's like, oh, this is like this character goes to like flower arrangement competitions, or like this character is like really into baton twirling for adults or something. Like there's always.
I love this.
I don't know about this list, but that's great.
Yeah, I'm imagining. You know,
it's
when you go to the grocery store and they have that sticky old binder full of all of the licensed birthday cakes that you can get.
I do know about this.
I'm imagining it's like that, and you flip through it, and it's like beekeeping, and
it's just screenwriting, shorthand. It's like you would, if you're writing a movie that takes place in wherever North Carolina, you're just gonna Google like what's a weird thing they do there, and then you could build a scene around that. It's kind of like from Blank Check, like the toaster,
the blender,
from
Enemy of the State.
Blender,
yes.
Yeah. It's just sort of like
that was an Alex Ross Perry coinage, right?
Yeah. Which is we should give credit, but like it's just sort of like a bullshit thing that like you put in there to
a little bit of color,
signify something else. And with
this
some
guy's
color,
interesting.
I think we have every right to accuse the screenwriter of this because there's several moments here. I mean, we mentioned the horse flashback thing. I had to double check because I thought maybe I was the fool, but when they bring it up the second time, Clint explains it like we've never talked about it before. He says, do you remember when you saw a horse in Mobile, Alabama? There was an entire scene like 10 minutes earlier where they talk about her seeing a horse in Mobile, Alabama. It's so bizarre. It's just clearly, I mean, look, it happens when you're writing. Maybe he went back and added it. He forgot that he had explained it the second time, but it's such a huge oversight that you would catch on like the first revision.
I think that, this is a good example of his Clint famously shoots like what's called the white draft of the script, which just means that like when the director when the writer turns it into the studio or to his production company, like that's it. That's what he shoots, right? And like if the script is written by Billy Ray or even like Dustin Lance Black or Brian Hedgelin, Haagen-Dazs, it's that's okay, but if it's written by Joe Schmo, Christian fundamentalist writer,
Randy Brown,
maybe stolen from some other nobody, that's a problem. Like the first draft of it, you feel it.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this with Hereafter because that was a script where Peter Morgan basically like showed an idea to his agent. Somehow it gets to Kathleen Kennedy, who she's telling M. Night Shyamalan about it on the phone, and Steven Spielberg overhears because they're on the set of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And then he's like, can I tell my friend Clint about this? And so Clint, in that one, he's like, I think, the generous reading of it is he wants to respect the thing that excited him about the idea. He wants to respect like, this is what made me interested in making the movie, and I don't want to change that because I trust my
that's very generous
instinct for what. But this movie could have used a steady hand on it. This movie could have used you bring in bring in Shyamalan to punch it up like you did Stuart Little too or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah, bring in.
Or, like a Steve Zalian or somebody.
Yeah.
Like, although obviously he wrote Moneyball, so maybe he would be against it fundamentally.
I do want to shout out the greatest interview question I've ever seen in my life. I sent this to Ian.
You sure did.
This is so Randy Brown, the screenwriter, gave an interview to Rob Edelman of the Society for American Baseball Research, SABR, which is what sabermetrics is named for. So they interviewed him about the film. And this is what he says. While watching the film and learning that Gus's daughter was named Mickey, I was wondering if this character was named for a baseball Mickey, Mantle perhaps, or Cochran, but this question was answered for me when Mickey explains that she was, indeed, named for Mantle, who is her father's favorite player. Any comment? It's like, I guess maybe that's why the guys from the Baseball Statistics Organization don't usually interview people.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that sounds like a question from the audience at the New York Film Festival or something like that. But yeah.
Boy, I love a Q&A.
A question that begins by somebody saying, now, I recently produced a film.
Yeah.
Okay, this is gonna
Dude,
be
I hate Q&A so much. I went to see a screening of Loving, the Jeff Nichols film, at the Landmark here in LA, RIP the Landmark, and Jeff Nichols was going to do a Q&A, but I had recently been to another one that was so painful that I was like, I got to get out of here. So we watched the movie. I liked the movie quite a bit. I think Loving is a lovely film. And so I just rush out right past Jeff Nichols, and I'm like, damn, he probably thinks I hated the fucking movie. And like, no, it's actually that I respect him. I don't want to watch him have to try to be nice to somebody who is asking an idiotic question about if he, like, what phase of the moon he likes to start shooting on or whatever.
We always leave as soon as the moderator questions are open and they go to the audience is when we leave. Last night I went to the Roxy and saw Alan Rudolph's Equinox with Matthew Modine, and Eric Stoltz was there there doing the Q&A, and they're like old pals and are so funny and charming together, and we're just like cracking everybody up. And then someone in the audience decides that it's a good idea to point out how funny and charming they are and how they should have their own podcast or like blah blah blah, and like won't shut up about how great they're being, and takes up like 5 minutes of the fucking Q&A, and just sort of, and it kills the energy completely.
Christ. Well, we should say Stoltz and Modine, come on Pod Casty For Me. We'll talk about whatever you want.
Well, yes, they would be great.
Yeah, man, Q&As are awful. Like, has anything good ever come out of a Q&A that wouldn't come out of a moderator, like a professional talking to the person?
I agree. I mean, Abel Ferreira is really amazing at them, because he'll just yell at whoever asked the stupid question and tell them that it's stupid and be hilarious. I
saw a screening of the Les Blanc documentary, A Poem is a Naked Person, that had Leon Russell in person doing a Q&A, being extremely curmudgeonly and telling people to fuck off if he didn't like their question, which, like, that's cool.
Yeah,
but
like Herzog,
Ferreira isn't curmudgeonly. He's just like, he is just a wild man, and will just like, he'll keep going. Yeah. But anyway, yeah.
I wanted to. Do we have any like plot stuff we want to get to, or should we try to figure out if this movie has anything going on in it?
Well, there's a lot of time spent with Gentry or whatever, this sort of shitty baseball player. And then I just remember there's also a lot of stuff with like them hanging out in that like local bar, which is a totally normal bar that somehow Amy Adams, adult woman who lives in New York City, like it's too hot to handle for her.
Yeah. And then she's like, There's a moment that we're called Space Cowboys, where she's playing pool against some dude who decides to get handsy with her, and then Clint goes completely nuts, like Mama Bear, but a dad edition.
But I guess it's foreshadowing the whole,
Oh yeah, I suppose you're right.
Subplot, yeah.
Nasty.
Yes, that's definitely what it is. Television show Banshee, which similarly is about like psychos who are inappropriately violent. So I thought it was a totally accidental, nice overlap. But I wanted to shout out, just in terms of nice moments. I mean, you mentioned Bo Gentry, Chad. I think he's kind of doing like a Tim Robbins and Bull Durham thing. I saw Bull Durham for the first time last year. I think I mentioned this maybe on our Perfect World episode. I was totally taken with it. I'm not a huge baseball guy, not even a big sports film guy, but movies that recognize that the interesting part is just like all the humans around this shared cultural object and sort of like the weird ways that they're affected by this mass interest, I think is, it's fascinating. And I think a well-made movie about it, everybody wants some. I think it's very fun.
I love that movie.
I watch Bad News Bears. I think baseball, a curmudgeonly guy hanging out with kids playing baseball is like a great milieu for a movie. Like, there's no reason that. Yeah.
I also think baseball is inherently cinematic and sort of arguably the most cinematic sport. I mean, that sounds kind of asinine, I guess, but it just kind of is. I don't know. I went to people talk about it like, as a version of like slow cinema or whatever. And but I went to I hadn't been to a game in a while. And last year I went when my cousin was in town, and, it is just, it's kind of a beautiful experience. I haven't seen a game since they sped up, that they sped up the timeline now. Yeah. Which I get for TV, and if they need to do that to save the sport, then I suppose it's okay. But it sort of seems antithetical to me to the game. Like, part of what's great about baseball is that it's so slow and there's so much time between major action. Yeah,
it built the tension builds. Yeah,
it's like a prime, again, like collective cultural object, because there's this mix of technique and mysticism and also just like experience around the thing. So you could have these big events like Bond breaking the home run record, and then you also have like personal relationship. I mean, it's kind of like, we can talk about Star Wars coming out as a historical moment or as like a phenomenon in the moment. And then you could also talk about you personally being turned down by a date, trying to go to, it's like these things that become woven into the collective fabric and the individual fabric. And I agree with you, Chadd. Baseball in particular, in part because it's not a high intent, like boxing, I think is cinematic for exactly the opposite reasons, right? And I think it's the reason that in boxing films, you only see about 3 minutes of boxing typically, is because it only works to punctuate extremely high tension moments. Whereas baseball lets you explore every person on the field, the fans, the coaches, the announcers, whatever, right? And you could just sit and watch people living American lives, which is very interesting.
I recently saw a film that makes a compelling argument that the most cinematic sport is actually rugby.
That's did not disagree.
Please tell me you didn't see that movie.
Invictus? We covered it on the show,
sorry.
dude.
I thought you were talking about Next Goal Wins.
Isn't that a soccer movie?
Oh, you're right.
Okay, thank God.
I haven't seen Invictus yet, but just the one more thing about the baseball thing, it's like it's also, it's very cinematic on television as well, because you think about it as like, to get a slightly lofty here, like cinema is essentially, shots laid next to each other and their relationship between each other, right? And so, baseball is a close-up of a pitcher, a close-up of a batter, and a wide shot of the hit, Yeah,
I mean, they're doing Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, like stare down.
100%. Yes.
Yeah. It's a duel.
And that's why it shouldn't be made faster, because that's, the whole thing is the stare downs, but anyway, none of that is in this movie.
Well, I mean, none of that's in the movie. I do want to talk about sports and baseball and all of this as a let's do the leftist Clint Eastwood podcast. Let's do the leftist part of it. I don't know enough about sports, and I also come at it from a former, when I was 15 or whatever, I would have been like a sports ball
super
kind of
owl type guy.
Yeah, I was more of a superb owl guy, but as much as it provides, as professional sports provide, often, a way for black and brown people to get positions of prominence and economic parity with rich white people, and often it's like these are some of the only black faces that we see in media. It also, so much of it is, and I'm not the first person to say this, but it looks a lot like old white guys buying black bodies and like trading them around. There's also enormous amounts of money being exchanged. There's so much corruption involved in the locating and the constructing of like arenas and stuff for teams. I mean, Mayor James Butts of Inglewood, who I
He
just wanted to
loves
say his
to be
name.
building,
He's gotten in trouble. Yeah. So like, I don't know. I mean, what is the argument for professional sports that makes sense to you, Ian, if there is one?
Oh, I mean, I think having sports as a shared object, I think is great. I mean, I think that's something that people accuse previous socialist experiments of as being like joyless, focused entirely on giving everybody the minimum and not allowing for these things that are maybe like extravagant by nature or unnecessary by nature. But I mean, first of all, this is totally opposed to if you ever read any bit of leftist theory. We talked on the J. Edgar episode about Emma Goldman. She talked about, wanting to be able to dance in any revolution very famously. And Marx loved like wine and theater. He was always talking about. So again, I think there is a great argument for just saying we can have something that is just for people to enjoy, that people get appropriate remuneration for.
Yeah, if you're selling tickets, selling ads, whatever, if you're the reason people are there buying $23 beers, you should be fairly compensated. But like, do we have to go back to the point where we say, well, why is this being televised? I'm not saying that people shouldn't move their bodies and enjoy being bodies in space and all of that, but
I think you can have televised sports as well. I mean, I think the problems come in, like you're saying, because these are billion-dollar industries that, first of all, I mean, it creates that complicated question that you can read lots of interesting things about in terms of players being exploited, which is why we support players in general in like a lockout or a type of situation. But also,
I'm going to be clear. I hate the game.
You hate the game, but these are like obviously members of what Lenin would call like a labor aristocracy, where they are so well off that it's hard to feel too concerned about them.
Are you back to saying aristocracy? We talked about this.
We did. You're right. I learned my lesson. Labor aristocracy.
Doesn't sound like you did.
They're labor aristocrats. How about that?
Perfect. Beautiful.
You're right. I mean, the issue is not that they shouldn't get a fair piece of the pie. The issue is that the pie is being baked out of like human bodies that make the sneakers and the products that are being sold in the commercials. And, they end up with a lot of this money, which is, I mean, they deserve it for creating the product, but they don't deserve it if it's off the backs of these people, right?
No one deserves that much money for creating the product. Yeah.
I mean, you could have a field that somebody mows and gets ready for a professional sports game that people can go watch, and everybody in I was in a hotel where we were trying to unionize with the same union that represents the Giants stadium workers, and they were often fighting for better pay. And if we're just saying that this is something that everybody is contributing to, get everybody a living wage involved with it, and then the excess money should probably just not be there, right? That's just a sign that people have wealth that they shouldn't have. So I don't really agree that we should object to like televised spectacle. To me, that's totally fine. But I don't know, Chadd, what do you think?
Well, that's all super interesting and lots of things that I hadn't thought about before. To me, what makes professional sports sort of like impossible to be leftist or positive in some kind of way is that like you're elevating, there are people that are elevated from, and POC elevated from poverty in this, in these arenas, but it's like, it's the lottery, man. And it's like you're selling a bunch of scratch off tickets to a bunch of high school students, and 0.100% of them will make it there. And yet you're selling the dream to all of them. And like, and you can argue about like what that does, where it's like, does that mean that like people don't focus on school when they should because they think they're going to be professional athletes or whatever? Like there's lots and lots of implications of that. And then you go from like, because I come from a place where like college football is the bigger thing than professional. And it's like, these kids, and now they are getting paid to some degree, but for a long time they aren't, which I support certainly. But like,
Peter Lawlick had to buy his underage alcohol with his own money.
Unfair.
Sad.
But like these guys are ruining their bodies and their brains for 4 years for and maybe 2% of them make it to the pros. And so these people are coming out of college with like CTE and like broken limbs.
Yeah.
And then now they're expanding the Big Ten to all over the country. So you're going to have people flying from Ohio to California and back. Like, how's that for their fucking education? You know what I mean? Like, so they're devoting their entire, like, you know, and they do get a scholarship and they do whatever, but we all know that like they're given free passes by teachers. Like, it's all kind of like a handshake thing. So like, how good is the education they're really even getting? Right. And 98% of them won't go to the next level. So it just seems like a really exploitative, like awful thing. And I don't know. I just, you know, my family loves football, but they also acknowledge how awful it is, but they keep fucking watching it. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think we should just get rid of football. That's my position. And honestly,
sure, but also boxing, UFC, like all this stuff. It's pretty barbaric.
Yeah. Right. What if we, to sort of trade, to get the kind of exciting blood sport sort of aspect in there, what if we just got rid of batting helmets? So we get rid of football entirely, but then we also take off the batting helmet. So there's a little element of like, oh, a guy could die here. Just an idea. I wanted to bring in the Moneyball question too, because like part of what happens in the film Moneyball, and again, I've only seen the film. I have not read the book. I have not watched baseball with really a Moneyball eye. I did play Super Monkey Ball for the GameCube.
Pretty close.
Pretty good game. Yeah. But there is a sense in that movie that this Moneyball approach does allow players who would have kind of been in that, whatever, 98% who sort of fall out of even the majors, like they just aren't superstars, you know, they aren't Derek Jeter or whatever, and it allows them to, you know, perform well as a team. You know, like the Chris Pratt character in that movie is like he's sort of on his way out of the league, and then they determine that if you put him with a bunch of other guys who can get a couple of hits a game, then it's better than having a slugger or whatever. So there's that, but then also like if you look at some of the, like Bill James, who is the guy who started sort of tracking all these statistics, invented sabermetrics basically. He's a very weird guy who said a bunch of things that to me remind me a lot of like contemporary like tech speak, where he talks about how the players don't matter. You could replace every single player in the MLB with no like measurable change to the game. A bunch of stuff that is like, you know, data over human beings kind of thing. That to me smacks of like, you know, when trusting numbers goes too far and gets into a kind of, I don't know, almost libertarian idea, I guess.
I mean, it's interesting, and I don't know, like Moneyball to me is such an effective movie that it really convinces you that it's right.
Oh yeah.
So it's hard for me to kind of like go back on that, and compared to this movie, which I think makes a horrible and completely weak counter argument, that just is like, so yeah, instead of trusting the numbers on a game that is based on numbers, based on runs, hits, home runs, RBIs, strikeouts, etc., like we should trust like an old blind guy and his lawyer daughter because they like have the instincts. I mean, I don't know, I'm sort of with Matthew Lillard in this movie, but I also understand the like fear of getting rid of the human touch of it all, and ultimately the, you know, Moneyball experiment, you know, kind of half failed and half succeeded, but they do, right. I believe, at least according to the end crawl of Moneyball, which is as much research as I've done into it, have sort of implemented, at least to a degree, that, you know, and maybe it's just a matter of, you know, everything in moderation.
Yeah, I think there's two elements. One is exactly like you're saying. You still have to moderate it with things like personality. Even in Moneyball, Jason Giambi's brother, forget his first name, comes in and he's like a party guy, and they realize pretty quickly that, I mean, even on off the field basis, he's having a bad effect on the team. So and Billy Beane, at least cinematically, I have no idea if this is representative of most of these statistic interested guys, but like you're saying, he goes to Scotty Hatterberg's house and he's happy to be able to offer him a contract and sort of bring him out of this like relegated version of sports, which is nice. And I think you're right to be suspicious, Jake, because just the fact that I forget the real guy that Jonah Hill's character is inspired by, Dave Bautista or something.
Dave Bautista.
Yeah, that's right, Dave Bautista. Yeah. He had studied economics at Yale, at least in the cinematic version. And what's funny is I think something that I object to, and most people who have a healthy suspicion of economics object to, is that economists, at least orthodox economists, have a huge problem with making massive assumptions about people, about markets, about politics, about treating people in a certain way as like rational actors who can be unemployed, not thinking about the effect that has on individuals, or sort of arbitrarily isolating variables. What's funny is I think the reason that works in baseball is it's a unique field where almost everything is done in isolation.
Well, yeah,
right?
it's kind of like a diamond shape. Did you know I was going to do that? I saw your eyes do a little thing.
Yes. Okay.
It hurt, actually. I'm sorry.
Because, there's almost no other sport where somebody is only pitching and nobody's trying to grab them or push them or whatever, right? Somebody's... Right. It's unlike the real world. So actually, I guess my argument is take every college professor economist who also treats poor people like shit and just send them to baseball. I think that's a fine area for them to work in.
Well, and it also has to do with why the ending of the movie is so stupid, because she's seen this pitcher completely in isolation. She is not seeing him against good hitters, bad hitters, left-handed hitters, when there's people on base, when they're, down, when they're ahead, all of these factors. Right. Yeah. All of these factors matter in terms of performance. She's literally seeing him in the most comfortable place that he has ever existed in. Right. And just assumes that he can pitch in the majors.
Well, hey, he can throw a bag of peanuts in the middle of a baseball game. And they did you guys catch the sound effect that they throw in where he throws the bag of peanuts at Bo Gentry? It's like,
I knew it was going to be a thing when they did that. Yeah.
So funny. I did want to, I guess, propose a potential. Oh, first of all, I want to say, I think that honestly kind of the beginning, the way that they show Gus's, John Henry beating the machine kind of capability, where he recognizes that Scott Eastwood needs to see his mom to, get his mojo back or whatever. Like that is so much more of an argument for human beings being involved in this than just being able to smell that the kid's hands slip on the bat or whatever he calls it. Like that is the kind of thing that you need a human touch for.
Going to back you up, the recent film Hustle, the Adam Sandler Netflix, I don't know if it was a Netflix produced or just distributed. It's basically the exact same plot line. Unfortunately, I will say that it is a better movie than this. Sure. And it's not a good movie.
It's definitely a better movie. I think it's actually a pretty good movie for sure.
I just mean that it doesn't attempt to do anything crazy. I would say it's just a well done run of the mill sports movie, and I would rather watch it 3 times instead of this movie.
I love a run of the mill sports movie.
And,
to be clear,
and it makes the same argument. It says these are human beings. If we treat them like humans, we will I guess squeeze better performance out of that, but just not great. But
it's time for the big brain read of the week. But this week it's really have I gone too far?
He's mad.
Do I need to be? Is it time for me to be put down? Do I have the cataract vision that Gus has? So this movie, and I don't know that this is anyone's intention. Certainly, I wouldn't ascribe this much foresight to Randy Brown or even Clint or Robert Lorenz. And it's a little early for this, although it is post Ryan Kavanaugh, post Relativity Media. But can we read this film as a sort of premonition indictment of algorithmically derived Hollywood greenlighting? Like, I'm thinking specifically the famous David Zaslav thing where he says there's some meeting at Warner Brothers, and Cry Macho didn't make that much money, and Zaslav says, why was it made if anyone had any reservations about it? They said that Mr. Eastwood had given the studio many hits and never delivered a movie late or over budget. And he answered, we don't owe anyone any favors. He quoted Jerry Maguire, another sports movie, by saying, it's not show friends, it's show business. And so...
What a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
Truly.
David Zaslav, let's take him to the... spoiler alert for the end of Halloween Ends, but we should just do to Zaslav what happens at the end of Halloween Ends. If anyone's seen it, they know what I'm talking about.
You were thinking of a different movie.
Yeah, I was thinking of Halloween Town, The Revenge of Skeleton Man, or whatever it's called. Yeah, but I mean, like, there's something going on here. I mean, if every movie is about filmmaking or whatever, this is the advent of algorithms determining what's going to be a hit. Like Relativity Media had one of these where they figured out if you put this movie star in a movie that's got a bicycle in it, then you're guaranteed to make, or you're probably guaranteed to make your money back or whatever.
I mean, but don't you think it's too early for that? Like, I mean, like Netflix doesn't become a thing until the next year, basically, as a streamer.
I do think it's early for that, but I think looking back on it now, I'm saying, is this an interesting thing to think about while we're watching the movie?
You did make me make the, like, Leonardo DiCaprio, you had my attention, or you had my curiosity, now you have my attention face when you said this. But, I mean, I think that... I don't know. I think that you could make an argument about, I don't know if it's the algorithm exactly, but like the slow sort of push that's happened over, 30 years basically, like, since Heaven's Gate or whatever, where it's like people taking over studios that are not movie people, basically, right? And it's like, first it was corporate people,
executives,
Coca-Cola, etc. Then it became like theme park people, and then it became Wall Street, and now it's become tech people, right? And it's like people that don't understand movies, don't understand that like somebody like Clint Eastwood turning Unforgiven into a $300 million hit, like, is not something that you could predict. You know what I mean? Right. And so you give that person chances to do that again, and like and to understand and know what you don't know.
You actually can't run a studio exactly the same way you would run like a paper manufacturer,
because no one on earth could have predicted American Sniper. You know what I'm saying? And like that could have been one of these, like, if I'm going into 2014 and guessing which is going to make more money, Jersey Boys or American Sniper, I would bet Jersey Boys.
Right.
And American Sniper only made $500 million than that movie. And so it's an argument for that. And I think that like somebody like Zaslav doesn't understand that because he doesn't care about movies and is a fucking dickhead and idiot. And I mean, I hope he hires me someday, but You're
gonna do Coyote versus Acme too.
I would like to big brain your big brain reading, if I may. First of all, if this is there, I agree that it's unintentional. It depresses me when people say that every film is about filmmaking when they mean it intentionally, because that you're basically implying that everybody in Hollywood is extremely boring instead of just some of the people in Hollywood are extremely boring and only think about one thing. So I like to believe that that's not the case. Regardless, if this is an argument against algorithmically chosen productions, then unfortunately it's an argument for also why algorithmically chosen productions arose in the first place, which is that we had already basically like crystallized, ossified. The industry of Hollywood had done this and was repeating a lot of the same anodyne stories. And unfortunately, what happened is that people came up with a solution that was even worse. So I think the film itself, Trouble with the Curve, is so boring that it is showing us what the problem is with what was the problem before algorithms came along, which is just like picking some stars and just throwing right down the middle and it's going to come up with the same boring stuff that's already been produced, just slightly more watered down.
Well, it does actually argue that you shouldn't throw right down the middle.
You're right. That's a good point. Yeah.
Ironically, Cry Macho, by the way, technically produced by the equally old to Clint Eastwood, Albert S. Ruddy.
Wow.
Because they've been trying to get that movie made for so long. But
The Offer fame?
Yeah, Miles Teller. Miles Teller himself.
Have you guys watched every single episode of The Offer with like I have?
I've had many clips of it texted to me, but I have not watched it.
One of the best terrible things that I've ever seen.
Yeah, I'm not like a big terrible things guy.
I'm not either, but it's not terrible like Troll 2 or whatever. I mean, it's like, I don't know. It's really, I don't know. It's hard to describe how much I loved it, even though it just is objectively not good. But I just really loved it, and it's just very watchable. Anyway, sorry.
I've seen the fake Pacino clip, and I'm excited to see it again 100 million times. So I did want to, speaking of a bygone era, I want to shout out all the old guys.
Do it.
Because I love the little gang of scouts.
Oh, we should mention, yes, one of the scouts is the old pitcher in Major League who...
That is... It's Chelsea... Yeah, this is Chelsea Ross.
It's Chelsea Ross.
I don't know if his name's pronounced Chelsea.
It's Chelsea, it's Chelsea Ross. Yeah, Chelsea Ross.
Okay.
Who's got one of those great faces. He's
got a great face, and he's in Major League. He's sort of like the old, similar thematically, is one of the old pitchers that Wild Thing Charlie Sheen kind of upends, but he's the guy that kind of has all these like super gross like tricks where he's like hiding like Vaseline up his ass basically to like put some extra spin on the ball or whatever. But he's great. I love this guy.
I love Chelsea Ross. Chelsea Ross is also in a very bizarre 2009 film called Formosa Betrayed, which my stepfather worked in like for the US Senate, and so he would get like free shit that had been given to the senator. And so like our house was full of like a potato that was like a stress ball potato from the potato lobby, and like a pen that had, instead of like, where you would turn it upside down for the lady's clothes to fall off, it was just like kernels of corn from the corn lobby. Anyway, we got a DVD of this James Van Der Beek movie called Formosa Betrayed about Taiwan. But anyway, Chelsea Ross is in that. Ed Lauter. Love Ed Lauter. He's, you may recognize him from The Longest Yard. And also, I think in a reference to that, he was the football coach in Not Another Teen Movie. He's in French Connection 2. He's in Family Plot. He's in A Million Things, Death Wish 3. All these are like New Beverly movies I'm naming. Like Born on the 4th of July, School Ties... a million things.
Also, Robert Patrick, obviously
Robert Patrick.
From Terminator 2, who we love, who really doesn't have much to do in this.
Anything
he kind
to
of
do
is just
in this,
like standing there listening to John Goodman talk at him and Matthew Lillard talk at him, and then he like decides one of them, and that's kind of it. Maybe he just wanted to work with Clint. I don't know. Yeah,
there's the guy. Who's the guy in Moneyball who plays the owner? Because he's so wonderfully evil. Let me see.
Yeah, he plays Steve Schott. His name is
Bobby Kotick, who was he's currently the CEO of Activision Blizzard. Okay. He's like an actual executive, which is why he's like dead behind the eyes. All right, that's I'm trying to think if we have any. We should sort of wrap our shit up here.
Here's one question that I'll ask, maybe that could help, is that, do we think that Clint will ever act again in someone else's movie? / have we confirmed that he's in Juror Number 2 or not?
It's unclear. He has that beard in the photos that we've seen, and I assume that is something he would grow for the movie.
I would think so too, but he's also and he has had a beard in a movie, I guess, but not for a long time.
Not for a long time, but like in some of the Westerns, he at least gets a little scruffy. But by the way, it's wrapped, apparently. We're excited.
I'm
should
excited too.
In theaters by our buddy Aaron from Hit Factory. Still has his fingers crossed for a Christmas release. I think that's a little optimistic, but I bet we can get it. We can get it by Valentine's Day.
I think I might be a little bit older than you guys, but like I still remember the $1 Million Baby like surprise thing that it just like took it was a movie no one knew existed and then came out at Christmas and became the Oscar frontrunner like that, and like everybody still wishes that he has one more of this in him, you know.
I certainly hope he does. I was also saying, you know, I don't know if he'll act in someone else's movie. It's possible that if Scott or Francesca directs. That's a good guess. Yeah.
But I don't know if I would love to see is, and this is another person that's tried to cast him that we forgot to mention, but I mean, if Quentin can get him in the Movie Critic.
If Quentin can get him, that would be beautiful. Even just like like the Bruce Dern part that was going to be Burt Reynolds. Yeah, that'd be lovely. I don't know. Could he play Don Siegel? I don't know if that's like the right sure, like Lynch in The Fabelmans.
Exactly. Yeah, like I feel like that's a way he can convince him to do it to sort of pay tribute to his mentor
as well. I like
that would be lovely. Yeah, I posted about this on Twitter, but if he's going to make movies about people getting railroaded, I certainly hope he's got the George Santos story in him as one last.
That would be great.
If his last movie is Juror Number 2, that's great. But if his last movie is Santos Betrayed, I would love that.
I think that like Juror Number 2, if he is in it, could be. I really hope if he's in it that he's the man on trial. So therefore, it's I'm a piece of shit / railroading crossover. You know,
I hope that as well, and I hope also that I mean, look, the last time he made a movie with Lex Luthor in it, well, the first time he made a movie with Lex Luthor in it, it was Unforgiven, and it won Best Picture. This time, Nick Holt has been cast as Lex Luthor in the James Gunn Superman movie. Right. So
he has a third Lex Luthor movie as well, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil.
Michael Rosenbaum, it's true.
Oh shit. Shit. Yeah,
nice sketch,
yeah. And you know what? Have they announced the director for Now You See Me 3? Because Eisenberg's in that.
I didn't want to tell you on this podcast. We're scooping some news here.
Yeah.
No, I'm just no. I don't know what they have.
Okay. Anyway, that's by far the most anyone's ever talked about Trouble with the Curve.
That has to be true.
Gonna about do it for us. Chadd, thank you so much for coming back.
Chadd, great to have you.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me. This is a great podcast. I don't know what you guys are gonna do once you run out of stuff, but I hope you do something else. And
we're going straight into Dennis Dugan. That is I have threatened Ian with the full Adam Sandler, and we'll do it eventually. But
that's kind of a really good idea.
Thank you. I agree. And he's also a weird secret Republican.
Exactly, and his movies are weirdly political in ways that are unexpected. So I actually think that's kind of a great idea.
Thank you. We'll do that in like 4 or 5 years if we're both still talking to each other.
I just watched the Bat Mitzvah movie, which I thought was great. And
is it?
I mean, great. It's very good. It's enjoyable. Yeah, it's a good C+.
Yeah, I've heard that too. And we can talk about Hustle again in 2031.
Halloween
sounds good.
That's. I mean, I would watch that also. Have you seen Hubie Halloween?
I haven't seen it. I missed it.
There's a part. So his mom is played by June Squibb from Nebraska.
Dern,
and at one point she says he's about to go do something, and she goes, "Hubie Doobie, careful." And I had to pause the movie because I was laughing to her. It's a wonderful film. Anyway, Chadd, would you like to plug anything? Anything you that people can check out your work?
Sure. I'm on Twitter at Chadd with 2 D's spelled out. And then I'll just the last movie I wrote and directed called Private Property is on Hulu, starring Ashley Benson and Shala Fernandez. And then movie I produced recently called Linoleum with Jim Gaffigan and Ray Seahorn and Tony Shalhoub is also on Hulu. And everybody loves that movie. So go watch it.
It's a lovely film.
Get yourself to Hulu right now. And if you type in the promo code Pod Casty For Me, it will say promo code not found. So that's just a little plug for that. But yeah, thanks again for being here. Let's close this out a little bit. Let's close that out entirely. What am I talking about?
Hey, commit. Let's do it.
Okay. Remember to subscribe, rate us, write a review. Helps us on the algorithm. If you like the show, tell your friend, tell your dad, record it into one of those little handheld voice recorders from before phones. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pod Casty For Me. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, or you're interested in co-hosting a 2-person Clint Eastwood podcast, you can email us at podcastyforme@gmail.com. Find all this and more at podcastyforme.com. Thank you to Jeremy Allison for our artwork. We, I think we'll have launched, by the time this comes out, we probably will have launched our Patreon, patreon.com/podcastyforme. We're covering all kinds of Clint-adjacent ephemera, even more adjacent and ephemera than Trouble with the Curve. So things like the films from before he was a director. We just recorded an episode on Rat Boy, Sandra Locke's 1986 film. So tons of weird shit over there.
And if you ever felt like the podcast was too highly produced, too tight, you said, I just wish these guys would just loosen up, focus a little bit less.
And too free, also. If you found the podcast to be too cheap, check that out. Next week, we'll be back with Jersey Boys, and friend of Chadd Harbold, Marie Barty, will be joining us for Jersey Boys next week. So,
nice.
Very exciting.
That's great. Definitely encourage her to sing. She has she has a lovely singing voice and showing it off.
Great. Ian once sang with the Mike Love Beach Boys. So
that's true.
You guys
can
canon. Duet across horrible Zoom lag. All right, that'll about do it for us, folks. Thank you. And if the Casper episode is any indication, this will become our most listened to episode. So see you next time, folks.